Okay, so we have our binding. We're just going to try to explain how we're going to do this. Okay, so you want to make sure you have an open space where your left side is halfway between it. If you have extra, cut it off halfway. And then you want your top to overlap at least 2.5 inches over the bottom piece, because your binding is 2.5 inches, so that's how much leeway we want over the top, is 2.5 inches. So measure it from the bottom strip over and cut it at 2.5 inches. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn this right side up. The right side goes up, okay, if you can see it right here. And then your left side is going to be up. So you're pulling right sides together. What you want to do is turn it this way so that your right sides are together. And just like we did with our binding when we were sewing it together in pieces, we want to pin it and then mark it at a diagonal. So we're going to pin it on the corners. Make sure you don't catch your quilt when you're pinning it. And then you're going to mark it where you're going to sew on a diagonal. So take my ruler and draw a line on the diagonal to mark it. And that's where we're going to sew. Okay. And if we do this wrong, which I have, we can take it out and try again, because it can be tricky. But and you don't have a lot of room to work when you're sewing it, so it can pull, and that's why you want to pin it good and make sure it's not pulling. Make sure your bottom layers are all flat before you start sewing. Okay, now we're going to take our sewing machine, back stitch a little bit, or if you don't want to back stitch, you can back stitch. Go over it again once you know it's right. But we're going to sew it, and then we're going to check it before we cut any of the fabric. Okay, so when you flip it around, it should do that. Because the first time I tried it, it did not. I had it twisted wrong. So, you want to make sure you check it before you trim any of that fabric off. Okay. Oh boy. Let's see here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It's tight, so it's gonna meet up okay. So what we want to do is take this little extra and trim it just like we did on our binding, and then we can sew it down. Okay, just trim that little curve off. And then now we're going to take this, make sure it's even, pin it to the edge of our quilt, and we're going to sew it down. sewed it, the corner got a little bit off center, but once I sew it down, it'll be all right. That's why you have to make sure it's pinned flat when you do it, because it's a little tricky. All right, so that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to take it and sew the rest of it down. This is an ordeal trying to videotape this while I'm doing it. So bear with me. Alright. I'm going to take it, sew the edge. You can hold it tight so that it doesn't pucker. If, you know, even though you have pins in it, sometimes it can. Good, I think. All right, so got one side of the binding sewn on. There it is. And now what we need to do is flip it over onto the back. And then we're going to pin it back on the back side of the quilt. And then we sew that by hand. Some people sew it with machine, but I prefer sewing it by hand because it's just the way I've always done it. It's how Grandma taught me. And if I try sewing it with machine, it shows up on the other side. If you don't get it straight, it looks goofy. I mean, the only way you couldn't tell is if you used the exact match color thread, which would be pale blue. But I still think if you're not going to get it straight, it's going to show up. And I've tried it before on other little baby quilts with other bindings. And it's, for me, it's hard to get it exactly straight. But I do like doing it by hand. I just think it looks nice. Because when you do it on a machine, it makes it look puckered to me. I mean, some people can do a pretty good job on it. I myself just do a better job with sewing it by hand. Now when you come to the corner, the mitered corner, if it seems like there's too much material there, you can just trim that little corner piece off. But I think I'll be okay here. What you do is you fold it down flat, and then you put your thumb in there and push the other fabric over, and there's your little miter. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's what it looks like. So you want to take that and pin it too, so when you come to sew it, it's easier to sew down because it's been pinned already. Because if you try to just flatten it down when you sew it, it's just, to me it's harder. I just feel like it's easier to pin a section at a time, and then as I sew, I'll take one pin from where I'm sewing and move it down to where my last pin was. So that way I'm not pinning the whole quilt, because when I pin the whole binding on at once, I tend to jab myself a lot. So like, I'll probably only pin this much at a time, and then as I sew it by hand. I'll take a pin from where I'm sewing, say over here, and pin where my last pin is over here. So I'll just keep moving my pins. So you can start, like, it's easier to start on a flat area versus the corners. So I start like, quarter of the way down from the corner, and I work my way over and then around. So I'm going to stop there, and then I will show you in my next video how I stitch it by hand. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.